Hi everyone, it's Dot, and I got up a little early this morning to make our dinner simply because today is just going to be a crazy day schedule-wise. And what I'm making is a dish called a $1,000,000 spaghetti casserole. And I had this a long time ago. A friend of mine made it for me, and I just remember it tasting great. However, clearly, spaghetti isn't very low carb. We're going to do a very healthified version of it. And my main ingredient is going to be zucchini and summer squash. These are going to basically serve as my noodles. So let's go ahead and start making our noodles. Now the first thing you want to do is wash and trim your zucchini. And then also what I did is I trimmed off anything on the skin that was just damaged and I just don't want it in my food. I'm going to use a spiralizer. You can certainly use, instead if you want, a grater if you choose. But the nice thing about this, it gets you really nice long noodles. And all you do simply is turn it like so. You just have pressure and you're making your noodles. And the nice thing about this too is that it takes out the core of the zucchini because you don't want where the seeds are at. And I'll have a link to where you can find a spiralizer online, but you can usually find them in your grocery stores. All the squash has been converted to noodles. Now I will say this, when you're using the spiralizer, you get very, very long strands of noodles. And if you don't want that, just take some kitchen shears and cut them if you prefer to make shorter noodles. That's completely up to you. Now, the next thing we're going to do is actually salt the zoodles. This is actually a very key step. Otherwise, you could end up with a really, really soggy casserole. There's a lot of water in the zucchini. So I'm just going to put a glass bowl over my colander or under my colander. I'm using kosher salt, and I'm just going to start sprinkling it over the squash, and then using my hands, clean hands always, you're just going to start tossing it because you want everything coated. And I actually may even add a little bit more salt. I've got about 3 pounds of squash here, so I want to make sure it's salted to get as much water out of it as possible. All right, I'm going to start working on my red sauce, and the main ingredient there besides the tomato sauce is going to be sausage. And what I'm doing is taking the sausage out of the casings that they're in, and all I'm doing is using my kitchen shears and cutting the casings away. And then you just peel them off. Now you have your ground meat ready to go. Now you certainly can use ground beef if you prefer, or ground chicken, ground turkey. Just keep in mind, if you go towards the poultry side of thing, it's going to be a low fat dish, or certainly lower in fat than what I'm making. And this is a low carb, high fat channel, so just keep that in mind, but that's completely up to you. All right, I have my sausage, and what I'm doing is I'm just breaking it up. I have it over low heat right now, and I don't want to necessarily cook it fast. I'm going to be cooking another sauce alongside of this, but the first thing I want to do is just break everything up into pieces, and I'm going to continually do this as it cooks too. I want them nice size, but nothing, but not too small. I guess sort of like Goldilocks, not too big, not too small, just right. All right. Sausage is cooking, my zoodles are still sweating, and now I'm going to make my white sauce. And what I'm going to use is whole milk ricotta cheese. That's really important. This is a very cheesy dish, which is why it's also so tasty. I'm also using cream cheese, and I've already went ahead and softened it. That's really important. You won't be able to mix it very well if it's hard as a rock. I'm going to add in my parsley, chopped ahead of time. I added about 1/2 cup of cream into my saucepan, and I have it on a very low heat. You don't want to cook it at too high of a temperature because it'll start curdling. Not that you can't use it, but it isn't necessarily very pleasant in the dish. I'm going to go ahead and add in my ricotta and cream cheese mixture to the cream, and then I'm just going to start mixing these together. Now, normally with this sauce, to help sort of, if it gets too thick, you normally would add just a little bit of your pasta water that you cooked your pasta in. Well, we're not doing that, so I don't have pasta water. So I'm just going to add regular water as I go, if needed, if my sauce is too thick. So what I'm going to do now is just add a little bit of salt and pepper. Again, just to season. You're just seasoning to taste. So you're going to taste it as you go. So my sauce is almost ready. I went ahead, it tastes really good. I sampled it. I don't have to season it anymore. And what I'm going to add to it are some beaten eggs. But before I add the eggs to it, I basically am going to temper my eggs by adding about a tablespoon of sauce in it, because what I want to make sure of is that my eggs don't overcook in here. I don't want scrambled eggs. So I'm just going to mix that in here. Add a little bit of Parmesan cheese. And again, this is all about tempering the eggs. I don't want them to turn into scrambled eggs in here. They will cook, but at a very low temperature, so they're not all scrambled. Add my eggs. I'm going to lower the temperature even more because the sauce is already warm enough. My sausage is looking great. It has to cook just a little bit more. You want, if you're using sausage, ground beef, any type of ground meat, you want it cooked all the way through before you put it in your casserole. My zoodles are done, but what I want to do is make sure I get that last bit of moisture out of it. But I want to show you how much liquid came out of the zucchini. So that is quite a bit of liquid, but there still is a little bit more in here. And this is an important step simply because it helps take off any excess salt that may be in there. And I usually do a little bit at a time, but again, I have long noodles. And all I'm going to do is like just start pressing on them with paper towels because you really want to wring out the last bit of juice out of them. Even after you use your paper towels, you still want to wring them out with your hands because there's so much juice in them. All right, I wringed out the zucchini as best I could. I put this in a saucepan I cooked the sausage in, and I'm gonna go ahead and add the sauce. And the only reason why I'm doing it in this particular pan is I'm gonna toss the zucchini in the sauce. I want it nice and coated before it goes into the actual casserole dish. And this just allows me the space to actually go ahead and toss. And you just sort of wanna mix everything together. All right, I got my sauce and my zucchini all mixed, my white sauce, I should say. There's also a red sauce, and that's coming next. Now, I've already pre-greased my dish. I just greased it with some ghee. Pour all of this in, and then you're gonna spread out your squash, or your zoodles, I should say. You wanna make sure they're evenly distributed throughout your casserole dish. All right, back to the stove. I have 24 ounces. I'm using Rayo's Homemade because it's a nice low-carb sauce and it's all natural ingredients. I'm going to use the same pan that I cooked the sausage in, and I just tossed the white sauce with the zoodles in. Why am I using the same pan without cleaning it out? Because guess what? You want that flavor from the white sauce mixed in with your red. Add my sausage back in here, and then I'm just going to warm this up a little bit. I want basically all the flavors to meld with the red sauce. And then you can also taste as you go. If you want to add oregano, garlic, salt, pepper, you can certainly do that. I go easy on the salt because although I wiped off as much salt as I could on the zoodles, they are going to absorb some of that salt. The sauce is slightly warmed. I don't want it terribly hot. I just want it cooked enough just so the flavor with the sausage, the red, and the white sauce sort of meld together. And now I'm just going to pour this on top of this dish, basically. And again, same thing. You want an even distribution of sauce. And your sausage, I should say. You want to make sure everyone gets sausage. The next thing we do is add cheese to the top of this. And I'm using mozzarella. And again, it's all about even distribution. I'm not using a whole lot. I'm only using a cup. That's the thing with low carb. A lot of people think you just cover everything with cheese, but you don't really have to. Although this is a very cheesy dish. Next up is just a tad of Parmesan cheese I'm going to be adding. I'm going to put tin foil on it, and we'll have this for dinner tonight. I let the casserole come to room temperature, so it's been out for a little bit less than an hour. I preheated the oven for 350 and put it in for about 30 minutes. All right, it is out of the oven. It looks awesome. It smells great. I let it sit out for about 10-15 minutes just to cool down, number one. And also, there is gonna be some liquid coming out of the zoodles. So this is a way for it to reabsorb the water a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut a slice. Using a knife, because you don't wanna disrupt the cheese that much. It actually looks a little bit like a shape of a lasagna, a slice of lasagna, but it's not. The zoodles are all up in here, as you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a little taste. Okay, it actually tastes like my lasagna that I used to make way back in the day when I was very carb heavy. A nice cheesy texture to it, especially with the ricotta cheese in there. So that's why it gives it a little bit of a feel of a lasagna. The flavors really come together, even though it's sort of layered and stacked with the zoodles with the cheese sauce or the white sauce on it, and then you have the layer of red sauce and then the cheese. Just awesome. Definitely can fill you up because there's a lot of cheese in here, so a lot of good healthy fat in there. I hope you give this a try. It definitely is a way to get lasagna or almost like a lasagna, but definitely a spaghetti back into your low carb life. If you like the video, go ahead, hit like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And until next time, I'll see ya.